Thank you for joining us for this episode of This Ability Podcast. I'm your host, Mary Baudouin, and joining us today is Cheryl Laws Tessier. Thank you for joining us today, Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Mary, for having me. Hello, everyone. My name is Cheryl Laws Tessier. I currently reside in Sunset, Louisiana. I was born and raised in Opelousas. After high school, I furthered my education at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, and I completed it with a Bachelor of Science degree in nursing. I worked a few years and then I decided to further my education in a master's degree in nursing. Shortly after that, I became a nurse practitioner. After graduation, I worked in cardiology. And then after a couple of years, I decided to transition into corrections.
Okay.
And so since 2010, I have been in a correctional setting as a primary care nurse practitioner.
That's great. And so you probably worked through COVID as well and saw
I did.
that phenomenon.
Yes, it was a time.
Looking back on that time, what was it like for you, mentally? I mean, I know physically that had to have been draining, but mentally, what was that like?
Mentally, it was exhausting. Very, very exhausting. But, we definitely pushed through. It was me and another nurse practitioner and a physician on our side with thousands of inmates, and we pushed through, trying to save lives and trying to prevent, inmates from passing away.
Right. It was scary at first because we didn't know this was a relatively new disease and people were still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So,
and especially in that environment, you have inmates living close in vicinity to each other. They can't socially distance. And so it's very difficult to figure out who's been affected and how to triage and those inmates. So it was definitely fluid. We had to develop guidelines kind of as we went. It was an experience. Definitely.
Well, I just want to say thank you to you and to all the nurses who made it through all the medical staff who made it through COVID and helped to get us through that. So let's talk about some advocacy in the special needs community. I want to ask you, how and why did you get involved with becoming an advocate for special needs, for people with special needs?
And one thing I forgot to mention, I'm married and I'm a mother of two. I have two beautiful children, Aiden, who's 13.
Okay.
And Howard, who's 5. Howard is my youngest, and he also is on the spectrum. He has autism.
Okay.
And so he's pretty much how I got involved. But there are some particular experiences that I would like to, some lived experiences that assisted with me becoming very involved with helping others in the disability community. Two in particular.
Okay.
I remember July 12th, 2021. It was actually Howard's 2-year-old wellness visit. Children, as they grow up, they have wellness visits with their pediatricians, their pediatric nurse practitioners, providers, and with these screenings is to evaluate if children have certain illnesses, to get vaccines, different things like that. And it was around that time, prior to that, we had noticed some speech delays and he was already getting speech, but I had already saw some other issues, some other needs that he had, I would say, sensory needs. Okay. And so, I knew some of the things to look out for, and I knew this was the age, that you kind of want to get things going, if you can. I finally had built up the courage to express my concerns at that visit. The provider at the time completely shut me down. Like, she looked at me like I had 4 foreheads, literally. It wasn't until the end of the visit, I remind her of the failed responses on the developmental screening, because some offices, when you get in the room, they'll make you feel like a checklist of, is your child doing this? Can he circle these 3 responses and stop if you have 3 no's or whatever? And milestones. Yes, exactly. And so we failed them, no milestones. We didn't have them, and I'm like, she didn't even look at this, so I had to remind him, you didn't even look at this. So I was very persistent, and I'm like, I'm concerned. He's not meeting the milestones. It doesn't hurt to get him screened and evaluated. And so I'd rather be safe than sorry. Early detection is key, and I just would like to get him evaluated again. At that point, I got a referral. So, I worry about me. I'm a provider, but I worry about the people who are not like me. They trust what their providers say, and they say your child is good. I don't think they need it, and they move on. They trust. I kind of know better.
Yeah.
I know, and I have that mama gut too. I just want to make sure. And so that was a particular experience that made me get involved in advocacy. Another experience was the day of his diagnosis by his developmental pediatrician. He initially got diagnosed by a psychologist. We were also referred to as a developmental pediatrician. And you always want to get that stamp of approval by the developmental pediatrician, seeing that your child is autistic. And on that particular day, all I could remember was at the same time she's telling me, I think you're right, Mom. He is autistic. Howard is running under the seats, all over the floor, the dirty floor. Around the time we were still going through COVID. Right. And so I'm trying to focus on him, trying to focus on her, and just feeling overwhelmed. I was in there by myself because it was still during COVID, so you can only have one parent in the room at the time. And then afterwards, she grabs this huge blue folder full of resources and doctor's orders with OT and speech and ABA and all the kind of resources you could think of. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I just remember feeling overwhelmed. Yeah. And I think these particular situations, these two is like why I got involved, because I just feel like it's just a disconnect between the healthcare system and then the community system. It's like no link. It's a missing link.
They were on extreme ends. One really pretty much did not have information or did not even pursue the autism route.
Correct.
And then the other one was like, here you go. Pow. Here's a whole binder of information, and that could be overwhelming.
It could.
Yeah,
yes.
Definitely.
Yes. I think those particular situations is kind of what got me involved. I did have some people that I knew,
right.
I was thankful for that kind of took me under their wing. Not everybody know where to go
exactly.
in those moments. And so I wish in the healthcare system, it was a way where at that moment, that point of entry of diagnosis, that they could link the patients up with resources.
Absolutely. And you're a nurse, so you know probably already how to go about getting resources, but other parents probably don't. And so they can feel a little lost, overwhelmed, or turn to the internet, which sometimes isn't a bad thing, but then again, there's a lot of information on the internet, good, bad, or indifferent. And so you can get some misconstrued perceptions of autism and things like that. I wanted to ask you, because I had a friend in St. Landry Parish that had a son that went through the Early Steps program. Is that something that you're familiar with? And if so, did that help your son?
It did. Actually, at his, I would say, maybe 12 months. I can't remember I think it was his 12-month visit, because it was around his first birthday. I noticed he wasn't having many words. And it was, again, the same provider. I told her, look, these are the words that he's saying, and that's it. According to these milestones, he should be doing this, and this. And she was like, well, no, he'll get there. He's a boy. Boys take time. Sometimes boys are a little slower than girls. They take time. And I was like, well, no, even though if they take time, I want him to get some speech. And so it was at that time, she referred me to Early Steps. And I think Early Steps was also assisted with me kind of giving the provider some additional resources to kind of say, hey, he is having some sensory issues, because it was his current speech therapist that noticed some sensory issues and alerted that, hey, he may need some OT. And then I was able to tell Early Steps, hey, can I get a Patel screening? And they did like a little Patel screening for autism. And I was able to have that with me too when I was at the doctor's office. And still, she looked at me like I had 4 foreheads. Early Steps was a big help also. But again, not many people know about Early Steps. Not many people know that you can self-refer yourself. You don't have to be referred by a physician for Early Steps. You can call the center in your region and do a self-referral for Early Steps. And then once you transition into the school setting, they'll actually help set up a transition meeting with you in the school system to get you in the school system if you are already in Early Steps. And so it makes it easier.
Is that the pupil appraisal
Yes,
thing?
yes.
Okay.
He is in school, and so he's 5. We started ABA in our area. Most facilities I've been seeing have like at least about a 6-month waiting list is what I've been hearing lately. And so ABA has a long waiting list. And so he started ABA when he was about 2 and maybe 3. And so we did ABA until he started kindergarten. Yeah. And so we transitioned from ABA to kindergarten. He was ABA full time, and then they actually went within the school with him. And so not many people know about that also. I think the early intervention was definitely would put him on the right track, because now we're actually about to transition out of ABA service. He started off kindergarten with an ABA line technician with him in the classroom every day, Monday through Friday. And now she's with him 3 times a week. And come next year, they're going to start with him beginning the 1st grade, just to get him accustomed to the new classroom, the new teacher, and possibly transitioning, because I think 1st grade, they may have to change classroom. But to get him accustomed to the new year and a new teacher. But that's it. Maybe the first 2 weeks, and that's it. He's excelling. He is verbal. There are different levels of autism. Every child is different. Yep. So Howard is level 1, and he's verbal. And so he didn't need as much support. Still needs some, though. Even when he will stop ABA, he'll still need some additional speech and OT, and he may still need some accommodations within his IEP for test taking and different things like that. He's able to be in a regular classroom setting. He still gets pulled out with his special education instructor every now and then. He's excelling. He's made 4.0s first and second week. I just posted that he made the Gator, if they do a Gator of the Week for their school at Kingdon Elementary. And so for the second time this school year, he's made Gator of the Week. Nice. And despite the needs that he has and the accommodations that he has, and having to be pulled out for the different things, still maintaining in a regular classroom, he's still excelling.
So let's talk about your role in the community. It sounds like you do a lot. You're currently on the St. Landry Abilities Board of Directors. You're the past chairman. I wanted to ask you, what have you learned through the experience, not just as a mom, but being a new advocate, and how has that changed your perspective, if any?
Definitely that our disability community has came a long way. I did a leadership program called Partners in Policymaking, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I'm not.
It's provided by the Louisiana Developmental Disability Council. And it's a 6-month training program that's free, and it helps us advocate. It's for self-advocates and for advocates. It helps train you to be advocates and to help change policy and partners in policy making. They bring in speakers from different areas of the world. They pretty much go through past history in the disability community. They go through education. They go through how policies are made, how policies are created. They go through how to talk to a legislator, how does the legislative process, so how to advocate in legislation.
Sounds like an amazing program.
An amazing program, and it's free.
That's even better. Because I think it's great to empower someone who, like me, like I'm just a mom. At the same time, like you, I've turned to certain people that I thought were professionals in the industry, and I've hit walls. Sometimes you can go to an individual and ask them for what resources they have, and they might not exactly have what you need. They don't know where to turn. And sometimes people just kind of don't know what's available statewide, or like you said, how to see about laws getting passed or policies getting passed. So it's great to, as the individual, empower yourself with the knowledge that's out there so that you can advocate for your child, for your loved one, for yourself, for your community.
Yeah, because, so much that happens on policy level comes down to a local level. For instance, with Howard being able to get behavior therapy within the school in St. Landry Parish, this was advocated for years before Howard even existed with Act 696. And then it was re-advocated for because they were having difficulties with even making it work in the school. And so it was re-advocated for with House Bill 872. You had advocates that had to go out and say their personal stories. And so this is why my son is able to be successful, because if he wouldn't have had his text coming with him in the school. He would have been leaving full-time ABA to just be thrown in the school system with no guidance. Now he's excelling. But it takes people that have come before me to lead the way. Somebody else have to kind of step in and do it.
So you would recommend that if anyone's interested in becoming an advocate, go through this Partners in Policy?
I would definitely recommend it. And then it is a commitment. It's a 6-month training once a year. They do select advocates, so you have to be selected. And if that's being a parent with a child with a disability is hard. Sometimes it's hard to find sitters. Sometimes it's hard to make that commitment. And so, but there's other ways of advocacy and other ways of getting involved. There's programs locally like LACAN. We have a LACAN program. You find your region. We have our Region 4 leader is Christy McCurtis. Mm-hmm. And you get involved with LACAN and she'll tell you how to become an advocate. She'll tell you how to get involved with your legislator and meet who's your legislator. How do I even find out who my legislator is? How do I even write a letter to him?
Right. What's great is that they can usually provide you with like a template.
Yeah.
And you kind of fill in your name.
You fill it in.
And of course you can add things or subtract things, but it helps to have a starting point. And that template is amazing to me because it's like, okay, I didn't know exactly how to word something, but all it takes is just asking someone for help. And then you can kind of get the ball rolling because there's people out there that are more than willing to help you to advocate.
And advocacy is just simply telling your story, telling your personal story to a legislator, to a committee, letting them know what you need, the things you're going through, because people who are not in our world just don't get it. And so sometimes they just have to kind of get a glimpse, and then maybe the light bulb will come on just a little bit.
I know that there are some nonprofits here in Acadiana that do work with children of various degrees with special needs. The Dreams Foundation of Acadiana is one, the Autism Society, the Down Syndrome Association. There's a lot. Have you found a particular nonprofit that in your community that has helped you and or your son?
St. Landry Abilities is definitely my first home. St. Landry Abilities is a 501 nonprofit organization. Their mission is to improve opportunities for people with different abilities in the St. Landry Parish community. They provide an intimate support group for members of their parish and surrounding areas. They host monthly virtual support meetings with guest speakers. They host annual resource workshops. They have inclusive activities such as movie outings, beach excursions, water park outings, and annual Christmas parties. One thing I love about St. Landry Abilities is more of just not the individuals with the disabilities, it's them and their families. It's more, they try to do more inclusive things. St. Landry Abilities was my go-to when Howard was initially diagnosed, particularly Bambi Polizzola, who is one of the founding members of the organization. She's a highly respected advocate in the disability community. She worked for the governor's offices of disability affairs. She's also my NAUW sister. And so that's kind of how we linked up. She's very highly respected. And, she is the one that actually kind of got me into advocacy and showed me about partners and about the SEEK Council. Every school board has a SEEK Council, a Special Education Advisory Council. So you can try to make decisions within your school board and partner with them. So I would definitely say St. Landry Abilities has been one of my favorite nonprofit organizations. But we partner with several other amazing organizations. Autism Society, Families Helping Families of Acadia, and amazing. So St. Landry Abilities and St. Landry Parish, we really don't have much. And so we needed something in our area. Everything is in Lafayette Parish, and so we needed something for our area. And that was one of the reasons why that particular organization was formed. Families Helping Families, I would say, is the hub. It's the hub of all hubs. And if you have a child with a disability, Families Helping Families is your hub. You start there because there's so much out there, but you start there and then they can link you up. They have educational liaisons that will tell you, what are your special education rights? What is an IEP? How do I prepare for this IEP? Like, what does the process look like when me and the school don't agree? Like, what do I do next? How do I get evaluated? They actually will come with you to an IEP meeting, but you got to call them ahead of time. You can't call them the day before and say, hey, I need somebody to come with me to the IEP meeting.
Right.
But they are available. And
I didn't know that.
They are available. Great. They are funded through our state. And so this is why advocacy is important. And this is why it's important for people like us to advocate for funding for programs like this. Because if we don't advocate, programs like this won't exist for us and for our community.
That's right.
Every year, Families Helping Families have to go in front of the government to say, can you renew our funding for education?
You guys have an active Facebook page. Do you have a website as well?
We do not have
no website. That's okay. Everybody goes to Facebook anyway. Families Helping Families, that's a great resource.
Yes.
Especially for this outlying parishes. Like you said, you're in St. Landry, and Lafayette does have a lot of resources. But then externally from those parishes outward, more rural areas don't quite have the resources we have. That's a good point that you made about that. Yeah. All right. Any other topics that you'd like to talk about regarding special need advocacy? Or
we covered a lot, Mary.
We did. Because I'm going to switch gears on you just a little bit, because I usually ask this to most of my guests when I do a little background. I wanted to ask you about faith and how important of a role that plays in your life and your family's life.
Faith plays a huge role. When I say Jesus is my homeboy, he's my friend, my therapist. I really don't know what I would do without him. I'm literally nothing without him, especially going through the time of wondering, okay, is he autistic? When all the world, even close ones, loved ones, was telling me, okay, Cheryl, you're overreacting. He's just a boy. He's taking his time. But I knew in my spirit, in my heart, I felt it. It was my mama's spirit, but it was also what I believed in and what God had revealed, that he was on the spectrum. Yes, faith is definitely a big part. I really don't know what people do without Jesus in their life. The walk we take in a disability community is just, it's not easy. I tell people at times, I'm like, I feel like I need a personal secretary to keep up with these appointments
I'm the same way.
And the therapist and
the appointments
and stuff. I would say it's getting better because, like I said, Howard doesn't have as much needs, but he's also an asthmatic too. Initially before Tefra, and that's one thing I did mention. Tefra Medicaid. Not many people know about this. If you have a person with a disability, no matter what income you make, your child can get Medicaid. And so before I knew about Medicaid, and so St. Landry Abilities was prominent in that, telling me about Tefra Medicaid, Bambi Polazola, like, do you have Medicaid? I'm like, I didn't know I could get Medicaid. At the same time, even though I had a good salary, I was drowning in bills, medical bills, early step bills. Early steps is amazing. But when you have a certain income, you have to pay for these therapy sessions. It's not a session, but them little sessions add up when they come in weekly.
Yes, it does.
Co-pays add up. And at the time, Howard kept having ear infections, different things. He had tonsils out. And I have really good insurance working for the government, but those medical bills added up.
And then, your transportation to and from, if anything like me, like with Lexi, with her diagnosis, we were going back and forth to New Orleans. And I was like, I'll be willing to go anywhere. Multiple appointments for different doctors because we saw a neurologist, a gastroenterologist, an orthopedist. Yeah, keeping up with all of those appointments and trying to juggle too, working.
Yeah.
I've always worked since I was 18 years old.
Yes.
I think that a lot of us, the moms, out there and dads too, listening that, if you have a full-time job and a child with special needs, it's a delicate balance.
It's a delicate balance. And I would say, and a lot of people in our community don't know, it's possible to still work if you are a parent that maybe have a child with a new diagnosis and are having issues with work or needing some support with finding some support with your child at home and you having to get to work, definitely reach out to a key in an area human service district, a community service district, and try to see about getting waiver services. You have to get screened. It's a process, but once you get waivers, it's possible to get some type of support to come in the home, care for your child while you can go to work or go to the grocery store or do whatever you have to do as a parent, take care of ourselves.
I think I've covered all the questions that I have for you, Cheryl. Do you have anything else that you want to touch on that we did not?
I just would encourage everyone just to stay involved and connected. I know sometimes as parents in a disability community, sometimes we get overwhelmed and it's mentally taxing. Try to find little periods of self-care, even if it's a long bath, something that inspires you if you're not that inspirational inspirational, or if faith isn't a part of your life, just try to find something that maybe makes you happy and it'll inspire you. And then just try to stay connected with some type of organization that appeals to you, because we cannot walk this road alone. And sometimes walking it with others, with similar situations, is very helpful.
Oh, I second that for sure. All right, everybody. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this edition of Disability Podcast. If you enjoy listening to our podcast, be sure to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel for our video podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Help us grow our audience by subscribing to our podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and other podcast networks. Additionally, if you enjoy listening to our podcast, help us to be discovered by leaving a rating or review of our episodes. This will connect us with other potential listeners and help us to expand our audience. From all of us at This Ability Podcast, we thank you for your ongoing support of our mission to unveil stories that inspire and enlighten others in the special needs community. All episodes can be found on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, and other podcast sites. Remember, you can also find our video podcast for each and every episode on our YouTube channel. The video podcast feature a wide array of pictures submitted by each guest for their episode. Check it out today.